The island rises from the Atlantic like a scar, small, sunlit, and deceptively quiet. Waves lap against its rocks as gulls circle lazily in the sky. But beneath the pastel houses and narrow streets lies a darkness that refuses to fade. For this is Gorée Island, once the gateway to the largest forced migration in human history. They call it the Door of No Return. A narrow archway opening onto the endless sea, framed by stone walls that once held thousands in chains. To step through it was to vanish, not only from your homeland, but from everything you had ever known. On the other side lay ships, shackles, and the certainty of exile. Centuries ago, men, women, and children were dragged here from the African interior. Captured in raids, betrayed by rivals, or sold for profit, they were herded into stone dungeons beneath the slave house. The air reeked of sweat, waste, and despair, thick with the cries of mothers torn from their children. The merchants saw them not as people, but as cargo. They counted bodies, weighed profit, and filled ledgers while screams echoed through the halls. Iron cuffs bit into wrists, branding iron seared skin, and guards patrolled with whips. The prisoners stared at the narrow rectangle of sunlight that marked the door of no return, their last glimpse of freedom. The rooms were small, no larger than closets, yet dozens were crammed inside. Men pressed shoulder to shoulder, unable to lie down, their breath turning the air thick and suffocating. In the next chamber, women sat in silence, rocking infants who wailed from hunger. Children huddled in corners, their eyes wide with terror. At night, the ocean wind carried the creak of wooden doors, the clink of chains, and the muffled cries of the captive. Above them, guards laughed and drank, their boots echoing on stone floors. The house itself seemed to breathe despair, its walls sweating salt from the sea and sorrow from its prisoners. Merchants arrived each morning, inspecting bodies as though choosing livestock. They prodded limbs, checked teeth, and ordered the weak dragged aside. Those deemed unfit for sale were tossed into the sea, their cries cut short by the roar of waves. Profit was the only measure that mattered. From the windows of the slave house, prisoners could see the ocean stretching forever. Some whispered prayers to ancestors, begging for strength. Others cursed the water that would soon carry them away. For all, the sight of the horizon became a cruel reminder of what they could never reach again. The door of no return remained shut until the ships were ready. Then, with chains rattling and guards shouting, captives were herded through it in lines. Sunlight blinded them after weeks in darkness, and the sound of gulls mixed with their sobs. Each step through that door was a step erased from home. Beyond the archway, boats waited to ferry them to the ships anchored offshore. Shackled pairs stumbled down wooden planks, some collapsing under the weight of iron. Whips cracked, lifting them to their feet, forcing them forward. The sea swallowed their tears as they were loaded into the yawning hulls. Inside the slave house, silence followed their departure. The dungeon stood empty but for the marks left behind, scratches on the walls, bloodstains on the floor, broken chains that no longer bound anyone. The ghosts of those who passed through lingered, whispering in the salt air. For the people of West Africa, Gorée became a wound that never healed. Villages emptied, families shattered, children stolen in the night. Mothers told stories of sons taken by spirits of the sea, never to return. Songs became laments, carrying the weight of grief through generations. The traders grew rich as the island grew infamous. Gold and ivory once passed through its ports, but soon human flesh became the most profitable cargo. Ships arrived from Portugal, the Netherlands, England, and France, each flag marking a different empire, but all serving the same hunger for slaves. Each empire left its mark on Gorée. The Portuguese built the first forts, the Dutch expanded the trade, the French crowned it with the slave house that still stands. Stones were laid with mortar, but also with screams, for the labor that raised the walls came from the very people they imprisoned. The Atlantic turned red in memory, though to the merchants it was only a highway of profit. Ledgers recorded numbers: 200 shipped, 100 arrived, another 50 lost at sea. Behind those numbers were fathers, daughters, entire bloodlines severed. The island became a ledger of ghosts. Some captives resisted even within the walls. They refused food, choosing to die rather than be sold. Others fought their chains until their wrists bled, defying their captors with every ounce of strength. A few leapt from the cliffs into the sea, their bodies dashed on rocks, but their spirits free. The guards feared rebellion, yet also mocked it. They tightened chains, doubled patrols, and placed spies among the captives. But fear could not erase the fire in human eyes. Even in silence, resistance lived. In clenched jaws, in prayers whispered to ancestors, in songs hummed beneath breath. As ships departed, the island returned to uneasy quiet. But the silence was never complete. At night, locals claimed to hear voices carried on the wind, cries of mothers, the clink of chains, the thud of footsteps passing endlessly through the door of no return. Gorée was alive with memory. Merchants on the mainland spoke of Gorée as a place of opportunity. They came with goods, cloth, beads, guns, trading them for human lives. Rival chiefs sold captives from enemy villages, turning old wars into currency. The slave trade poisoned not only the island, but the entire coast. Each departure weakened Africa itself. Strong young men, skilled women, children with futures, all stolen in waves. Fields lay untended, traditions broken, communities emptied. The island's wealth was Europe's gain, but Africa's loss, and the price was measured in lives never lived. The sea became both path and tomb. Sharks followed the ships that sailed from Gorée, drawn by the bodies tossed overboard. Sailors spoke of fins cutting the waves like knives, shadows that never left the ship's sides. For the captives, the ocean was already a grave before they set sail. In time, the island's reputation spread across the world. To Europeans, it was a jewel of empire, proof of their dominance. To Africans, it was a place of dread, a word spoken with sorrow. To those who passed through it, it was the end of everything they had known. Yet the island endured, its stones soaking up centuries of grief. Today, its pastel houses and cobbled streets seem picturesque, a postcard from another age. But for those who know, the beauty hides horror. Gorée is not just an island. It is a monument of suffering, a place where ghosts still walk. Tourists now walk the corridors where chains once clattered. They run their hands along the walls, touching grooves carved by desperate fingers. Some weep, some fall silent, unable to explain the heaviness that clings to the air. The island does not let visitors leave untouched. Guides tell stories passed down through generations. They speak of children separated from mothers, of men branded with irons, of women forced into chambers of humiliation. Each story is a shard of truth, piecing together the suffering that statistics could never capture. The door of no return frames the ocean still, the same horizon that swallowed millions. Standing before it, one sees not just water, but absence, the countless who stepped through and never came back. It is an opening not only to the sea, but to silence. Some say the island is haunted. At night, when the streets are empty, footsteps echo where no one walks. Whispers rise with the wind, carrying voices in forgotten tongues. Whether spirits remain or memory itself has become alive, no one can say. Historians argue about how many passed through Gorée. Was it tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands? Numbers shift with each new study, but the truth lies beyond counting. For each life taken, a world of descendants was erased, futures that never came to be. The merchants wrote nothing of sorrow. Their records listed only numbers, weights, and prices. Yet between the lines, grief bleeds through. Every column of figures is a monument of absence, every ledger a gravestone for those denied names. The Atlantic economy grew fat on Gorée's trade. Sugar plantations in the Caribbean, cotton fields in America, mines in Brazil, all fed by the labor stolen from Africa. The island was small, but its reach spanned continents, binding them in chains of profit and pain. Yet even within despair, acts of defiance flickered. Women smuggled songs into their children's ears, teaching them words that would survive the ocean. Men shared secret prayers, invoking ancestors to guard their souls. These fragments endured when bodies could not. Some Africans who collaborated with the trade later faced judgment. Villages cursed their names, families carried shame for generations. But for many, choices were made under the shadow of survival, caught between the gun and the chain. Blame was tangled in empire's snare. The French strengthened Gorée with cannons and forts, fearing attack from rivals. Yet the greatest battle was not fought with ships, but with memory. The captives who passed through waged their war in silence, their defiance carved into the very stones that confined them. Centuries passed and the slave trade was abolished. Ships stopped coming, chains were removed, and the dungeons emptied. Yet freedom did not erase the scars. The island remained, its walls saturated with centuries of screams. Liberation came too late for millions. In the 20th century, Gorée was rediscovered as a site of memory. Leaders from Africa and across the world came to walk its halls. They placed wreaths at the door of no return, bowed heads in silence, and declared that such horror must never happen again. For descendants of the enslaved, the island is sacred ground. They come from the Americas, the Caribbean, Brazil, carrying names their ancestors never knew. Standing at the door, they whisper prayers, tears sliding into the sea that once claimed their families. The island thus became not just a place of history, but of pilgrimage. Each step on its cobblestones is a step through time. Each breath in its dungeons is a connection to voices long silenced. Gorée teaches not with books, but with presence. Even so, some deny or minimize its past. They call the numbers exaggerated, the stories embellished. But the walls do not lie. They bear scratches, scars, and echoes too deep to be dismissed. To question them is to ignore the weight of suffering carved into stone. The ghosts of Gorée demand remembrance. They are in the salt air, the crashing waves, the cries of gulls overhead. They are not shadows of the past, but warnings for the present, reminders of how greed can blind humanity to its own cruelty. Children in Senegal learn the story of Gorée early. Teachers take them to the island, guiding them through the dungeons. They see the iron shackles, the dark rooms, the door to the sea. Their young faces reflect both horror and resolve. Never again. Artists, poets, and musicians draw inspiration from the island. Paintings capture the door of no return as a gaping wound. Songs weave its sorrow into melody, and plays retell the stories of captives in words that cut deeper than history books. Gorée breathes through art. The island itself has become a paradox. Its bright colonial houses and flowering bougainvillea charm the eye, while its slave house pierces the heart. Tourists buy postcards and trinkets, yet just steps away, chains lie rusting in shadow. Beauty and horror coexist uneasily. Still, Gorée endures because memory endures. The ghosts cannot be banished, nor should they be. For in their whispers lies truth, in their silence lies warning. To remember Gorée is to confront the darkest corners of humanity and to promise that such doors will never open again. The sea outside Gorée glitters under the sun, deceptively calm. Tourists snap photos of its beauty, unaware that beneath those waters lie the bones of the drowned. Each wave carries both light and grief, shimmering with secrets no tide can wash away. Fishermen who cast their nets near the island speak of strange silences. Some mornings the ocean is still, as if holding its breath. At times they claim to hear voices rising from below, songs that do not belong to the living. Memory haunts the water itself. The door of no return has become the island's most powerful symbol. Framed against the ocean, it is at once an ending and a beginning. For those who passed through, it was the end of home. For those who return centuries later, it is the beginning of remembrance. Inside the slave house, narrow staircases connect the dungeons to the upper halls. Merchants once stood there, bargaining over bodies below. The contrast is stark: sunlight above, shadows below. Profit at the top, suffering at the bottom. The architecture itself tells the story of hierarchy. Chains still hang on the walls, relics that need no explanation. Tourists reach out to touch them, their hands trembling. Some pull back immediately, as if the iron still burns. The past lingers in the cold metal, refusing to let go. For centuries, European ships lined the waters outside Gorée. Their sails dotted the horizon like a forest of ghosts. Each ship carried hundreds, sometimes thousands, bound for the Americas. The island was a funnel, narrowing human lives into the abyss of the Middle Passage. Villagers inland dreaded the name. Mothers warned children not to stray too far, lest raiders take them to Gorée. Elders prayed at night, begging the spirits to shield their people from capture. The island became less a place than a curse whispered in fear. Yet, even in despair, bonds endured. Prisoners in the dungeons shared food, whispered comfort, and prayed together. They braided songs into silence, fragments of culture that crossed the sea. Gorée tried to erase them, but memory flowed like blood, unstoppable. Merchants wrote letters to Europe boasting of their riches. They described the fort's defenses, the volume of slaves shipped, the profits earned. Rarely did they mention the human cost. When they did, it was only to lament losses, meaning those who died before sale. But the captives' lives were more than numbers. Each one carried stories, names, loves, and dreams. Each one represented a lineage cut short. Gorée was not only a marketplace, it was the theft of futures, the silencing of countless voices. Today, scholars attempt to piece together those lost voices. They study oral histories, trace family lineages, and read fragments of testimony left behind. Every discovery is like finding a whisper in the wind, fragile but vital, restoring dignity stolen long ago. The island has become a UNESCO World Heritage Site, preserved as a reminder. But preservation is not enough. Memory must be active. To walk through Gorée is to take responsibility, to carry the weight of history forward so that silence does not return. In the dungeons, the air is thick, humid, and heavy even now. Guides tell visitors to imagine dozens crammed into each cell, surviving on scraps, breathing the same fetid air. It is not hard to imagine. The walls seem to exhale the suffering of centuries. Some visitors leave offerings, flowers, candles, or written prayers. They place them near the door of no return, as if sending messages across time. The gestures are small, yet powerful, acknowledgments that those who passed through were not forgotten. The ghosts of Gorée are not vengeful. They do not ask for revenge, only remembrance. Their whispers demand that the world acknowledge what was done, that their pain not be dismissed as mere history. To honor them is to keep humanity from repeating the same cruelty. The island stands as a contradiction, beautiful yet brutal, peaceful yet haunted. Tourists smile in cafes, children play in the streets, while just steps away, chains rust in the dark. Gorée teaches that the past and present are never truly separate. Each year, thousands make pilgrimages to the island. Descendants of the enslaved weep as they cross the threshold of the door of no return. Some kneel, pressing their foreheads to the stone. For them, the journey is not tourism, it is homecoming, even if home no longer exists. The Atlantic wind carries their cries into the sea, mingling with those of ancestors. The ocean becomes both grave and bridge, a link between those who left and those who remember. Every wave that breaks on the island's shore is a voice rising again. And so, Gorée endures. It endures as a scar, a teacher, a monument. It endures because forgetting would be another betrayal. The ghosts of Gorée walk still, not to terrify, but to guide, reminding all who listen that history lives in the stones, the water, and the silence. The elders of Senegal say the island breathes. They tell of nights when the wind grows heavy and the sea grows still, as if the spirits are gathering at the door of no return. Some claim to see shadows moving across the threshold, figures with shackles that vanish into mist. Children who visit on school trips stare wide-eyed into the dungeons. Their teachers explain how entire villages were emptied, how generations were stolen. For the young, it is their first confrontation with the weight of history. Some leave shaken, their laughter silenced by stone. The door itself has been photographed countless times, yet each image feels different. Some capture it as a wound, others as a monument. But for those who stand before it, no photo suffices. To be there is to feel absence pressing against your chest. The church bell on the island rings every hour. Once, it marked time for traders and guards. Now, it tolls over memory, each sound echoing centuries of loss. The bell has become a paradox, a symbol of faith for some, a reminder of hypocrisy for others. Scholars debate whether Gorée was the largest port of its kind or just one among many. But the argument misses the point. Size does not matter when each life carried through its gates was an entire world. Gorée is vast not in numbers, but in meaning. The island's pastel houses stand in striking contrast to the slave house. Their colors, peach, yellow, blue, glow under the sun. Tourists admire their beauty, but locals know that these walls were once homes for traders who grew rich on human misery. Bright paint cannot hide dark foundations. Artists paint Gorée again and again. Some depict the door as a gaping mouth swallowing souls. Others show chains turning into waves, merging with the sea. Each brushstroke is both art and testimony, capturing the truth that words often fail to express. In music, too, Gorée lives. Drums beat rhythms of sorrow. Voices chant laments that echo the cries of the enslaved. Musicians weave the island's grief into songs that travel far beyond Senegal, carrying memory across oceans once filled with slave ships. The island's marketplace bustles today, selling crafts and souvenirs. Yet, beneath the cobblestones, archaeologists find fragments, shards of pottery, broken chains, bones. The earth itself refuses silence, revealing remnants of those who suffered here. At sunset, the island glows golden. The ocean shimmers, the houses gleam, and for a moment, Gorée looks almost idyllic. But the beauty is deceiving, for when darkness falls, the island remembers. The night air grows thick, and the ghosts stir once more. For descendants of the enslaved, visiting Gorée is both healing and painful. It offers connection to ancestors, but also confronts them with unimaginable suffering. Many describe it as walking into the past, feeling the weight of chains on their own shoulders. Politicians and world leaders have visited Gorée, standing solemnly at the door of no return. They bow their heads, lay wreaths, and pledge remembrance. Yet speeches fade, and the challenge remains: to turn memory into justice, history into warning. The Atlantic continues its endless rhythm, waves breaking against stone. It has witnessed everything: arrival, departure, suffering, silence. The sea is both accomplice and witness, betrayer and mourner. In its depths lie more stories than any archive could hold. The ghosts of Gorée are not confined to the island. They travel with the diaspora, living in the songs of the Caribbean, the dances of Brazil, the prayers of America. Every rhythm, every hymn carries fragments of those who passed through the door. Some say the door of no return is not only for the enslaved, it is a warning for us all. It reminds humanity how easily cruelty can be normalized, how profit can blind compassion, how silence can enable atrocity. To forget is to risk opening such a door again. Visitors leave Gorée changed. They step back onto the ferry to Dakar with eyes that see differently. The ocean they cross seems deeper, heavier. The island recedes behind them, but its memory clings like salt on their skin. For Senegal, Gorée is both burden and pride. Burden because it holds centuries of sorrow. Pride because it endures as a beacon of remembrance, refusing to let history vanish. The island embodies the resilience of a people who choose to confront, not conceal. Legends tell of ancestors who still guard the island. They say that at night, if you listen closely, you can hear their songs in the waves. These are not laments, but vows, that their memory will never die, that their voices will outlast the silence of time. And so, Gorée stands, an island of beauty and pain, of ghosts and pilgrims, of silence and song. Its stones whisper the same truth to all who visit: remember us, carry us, and never let the world forget what passed through this door. The ferry ride back to Dakar lasts only minutes, but in those moments, the mind lingers. Passengers sit in silence, some clutching souvenirs, others staring at the horizon. The city lights ahead feel distant, as if belonging to another world entirely. Back on the mainland, life resumes. Cars honk, markets bustle, children laugh. Yet those who return from Gorée carry a shadow within them. The island plants a seed of memory that grows silently, reminding them that beneath every joy lies a responsibility to remember. Senegalese families often tell their children, "Do not fear Gorée, fear forgetting." For them, the island is not only tragedy, it is also testimony. It proves that their ancestors endured and that survival itself is a victory against erasure. The slave house has been restored many times, but the restorations cannot soften its weight. Fresh paint peels quickly, as if the walls reject beauty. The dungeons remain dank and narrow, unwilling to let comfort mask truth. The house demands honesty. Some elders say the island chose its role. Surrounded by deep waters, it became a natural prison. The currents carried away ships filled with captives while the land stood helpless, watching. Gorée became the witness that could never look away. For centuries, the Atlantic was called the Middle Passage between worlds. But for Africans, Gorée was the passage before the passage. It was the threshold, the liminal space where life ended as one thing and began as another, bondage across the sea. The island's fortifications still stand, cannons rusting on their mounts. They once defended European traders from rival empires. Yet the greatest danger was never foreign ships, but the corruption of the trade itself. Cannons pointed outward while the real war was waged within. Local fishermen tell of days when their nets bring up bones. They treat them with reverence, reburying them in sacred ground. Whether the bones are from captives or sailors, no one knows. But each discovery is another reminder that the ocean has not forgotten. Some poets describe the door of no return as a mouth, others as a wound. But perhaps it is both. A wound that swallowed millions, a mouth that spoke silence into the world. Its meaning shifts, but its power remains constant. The French once decorated Gorée with flowers and flags, trying to show it as a jewel of their empire. But beneath the banners lay dungeons, and beneath the flowers lay graves. Empire cannot erase the truth hidden in stone. When abolition came, the island did not rejoice. There were no chains to break, no captives left to free. Only silence remained, the echo of absence. Gorée's victory was not liberation, but endurance, standing still while history moved on. Yet endurance gave it new purpose. In time, the island became a place of remembrance where history could not be denied. The ghosts, once trapped in silence, began to speak through tours, stories, and ceremonies. Memory became a weapon against forgetting. Each visitor adds another layer of remembrance. They take photos, write journals, compose songs, or simply carry the weight in silence. Gorée multiplies its power with each person who leaves, for memory spreads like water, flowing beyond borders. The Atlantic has no graves, yet Gorée is its gravestone. To stand on the island is to realize the ocean is not empty. It is filled with names we will never know. The water itself is alive with memory, waves crashing like the beating of ancestral drums. Some say the true monument of Gorée is not the slave house, but the survivors. Those who endured the passage, who built new lives in foreign lands, who carried songs and spirits across centuries. Gorée was their doorway, but not their ending. In the Americas, echoes of Gorée appear in music, language, and dance. The beat of drums in Haiti, the rhythm of samba in Brazil, the sorrow of spirituals in America, all carry traces of the island. Though their bodies left, their culture crossed the sea. Tour guides often end with silence. After telling stories of horror and survival, they stand quietly by the door of no return. The silence itself becomes the lesson, heavier than words, deeper than tears. Visitors understand without needing explanation. For Gorée is not history, it is presence. It breathes in every stone, every chain, every wave. It insists on being felt, not just studied. To walk its streets is to walk with ghosts and to carry them beyond the island. The island's legacy is this: remembrance as resistance. To remember is to honor is to defy erasure. Gorée teaches that silence is the true enemy, and memory is the only weapon strong enough to keep the door closed forever. In Dakar, school children are brought to Gorée as part of their education. Teachers remind them that the island is not only a monument of pain, but also of resilience. To know Gorée is to know themselves, to understand the roots of freedom they inherit. Some children cry as they walk through the dungeons, holding their teachers' hands tightly. Others ask questions, their voices sharp with curiosity and disbelief. Why, they demand, unable to grasp the enormity of the cruelty. The teachers can only shake their heads. Elders speak of Gorée with reverence, calling it a sacred wound. They say the island must always remain, even if the sea swallows it one day. For as long as Gorée exists, the voices of the departed will never be silenced. International leaders have visited, bowing their heads before the door of no return. Some apologize, others make promises. Yet the stone arch remains unchanged. It accepts no excuses, no speeches. It demands action beyond words. Artists, too, find inspiration on Gorée. Painters sketch the curve of the archway. Musicians compose songs that echo with waves and drums. Writers craft novels that breathe life into the nameless, restoring faces to the faceless. Creativity becomes an act of remembrance. The island's narrow streets bear pastel houses, their colors bright against the blue sea. Tourists often marvel at the beauty, forgetting for a moment where they stand. Yet the beauty is part of the paradox, flowers blooming in a cemetery without markers. Historians debate numbers, arguing whether Gorée held thousands or tens of thousands. But the island resists statistics. Its story is not about numbers, but about souls. Every stone whispers of individuals, fathers, daughters, mothers, sons, each life infinite in meaning. Local guides often end tours with a plea: tell others what you saw. For Gorée's survival depends not on walls, but on memory carried forward. Each visitor becomes a messenger, spreading fragments of the story beyond the island. Sometimes the sea itself seems to speak. Visitors describe sudden chills, as if touched by unseen hands. Others say the waves crash louder by the door of no return, as though the ocean remembers the cries swallowed centuries ago. Gorée is both personal and collective. Families come to grieve ancestors, nations come to reckon with history, and strangers come to bear witness. Each perspective adds another layer, weaving a tapestry of memory that binds past and present together. The island has seen empires rise and fall: Portuguese, Dutch, English, French. Each left traces, yet all were bound by the same cruelty: the trade in human lives. Gorée's stones are layered with conquest, but also with resistance. Archaeologists continue to dig, uncovering fragments of pottery, iron shackles, beads, and bones. Each discovery adds another voice to the chorus of history. The soil itself refuses to forget, offering up reminders piece by piece. Ceremonies are held on the island every year. Drums echo, libations are poured, and prayers rise to the ancestors. Participants dance barefoot on stone floors, reclaiming space once filled with suffering. Ritual transforms memory into strength. For the diaspora, Gorée is a pilgrimage. African Americans, Caribbeans, and Brazilians return to stand where their ancestors once stood. Tears fall freely as they touch the stones, whispering names they may never know but still claim as family. Some describe the visit as healing, others as wounding, but all agree it changes them. Gorée becomes part of their identity, a reminder that their survival carries responsibility, to honor the past and to fight against injustice in the present. The island teaches that memory is not passive, it is active, demanding. To remember Gorée is to act in the world, to resist oppression wherever it appears. Its lesson transcends history, speaking to the timeless struggle for dignity. From afar, Gorée seems like any other island, beautiful, calm, picturesque. But those who have set foot on its shores know differently. Its silence is heavy, its beauty haunted, its waves filled with voices. Gorée cannot be mistaken for anywhere else. Children sometimes play along its beaches, laughing as they chase the tide. Their joy is proof that life continues, that the future belongs to them. Yet, even in their laughter, the island whispers, reminding all who listen that freedom was bought with blood. And so Gorée endures, not just as stone and sea, but as memory, warning, and promise. It stands for those who were taken, for those who survived, and for those yet to come. The ghosts of Gorée walk with us still, guiding, reminding, demanding never to forget. Night falls over Gorée with an eerie stillness. The pastel walls glow faintly under moonlight, and the ocean laps gently at the shore. Yet beneath the calm, the island feels alive with memory, as if the stones themselves are breathing. Visitors who stay overnight often speak of strange dreams. They hear chains rattling in the distance or voices singing in unfamiliar tongues. Some wake with tears on their faces, unable to explain why. The island has a way of entering the soul. Fishermen returning late sometimes avoid docking near the slave house. They say the waters there are restless, pulling nets in strange directions. To them, the ocean still carries the weight of the drowned, and it resists being disturbed. The door of no return faces west, toward the Americas. Elders say this is no accident. It is a wound that points forever to the lands where their kin were taken. Each sunset glows red across its arch, as if the sun itself remembers. Local children grow up hearing stories of Gorée, told in whispers by grandparents. They are taught to walk with respect, to never mock the dungeons, and to always greet the sea with a prayer. For the island is not just history, it is sacred ground. Guides remind visitors that Gorée was not the only port of slavery. Dozens of forts dotted Africa's coasts, each with its own door, its own ghosts. But Gorée endures as symbol, the face of a collective wound that stretches across centuries. Some say the ghosts are not trapped, but waiting for recognition, for justice, for voices strong enough to carry their story forward. The silence of the island is not emptiness. It is patience, heavy as stone. When rain falls, the dungeons flood. Water seeps across the floors, filling the cracks where chains once lay. The image is haunting. An ocean reclaiming its dead, rising to remind the living of what was lost. Scholars argue about memory, whether Gorée's numbers are exaggerated, whether myths overshadow facts. But those who step into the slave house know the debate misses the point. Facts matter, but so does the weight of human suffering etched into stone. The island's economy today depends on tourism, but its spirit resists commercialization. Artists sell paintings and jewelry, yes, but always with reverence. The island is both marketplace and memorial, life and death entwined. Some diaspora visitors bring offerings, flowers, seashells, small bottles of rum. They leave them at the door of no return, gifts for the ancestors. The ocean takes them, waves sweeping the offerings away as if carrying them to unseen hands. There are moments when the wind shifts suddenly, carrying the smell of salt, sweat, and smoke. Guides say it is imagination, but others believe it is memory surfacing, refusing to stay buried. The past has a way of seeping through the present. Artists who live on Gorée often say they create not for themselves, but for the island. Their paintings are bright, filled with faces and chains, sunsets, and tears. Each canvas is an attempt to make the silence speak. The French once tried to minimize Gorée's role, dismissing it as a minor port. But descendants pushed back, insisting that the island's symbolism mattered more than numbers. Gorée had become a shrine, and shrines are measured in memory, not in statistics. In ceremonies, drummers strike rhythms that echo the heartbeat of the island. Each beat feels like a footstep, each rhythm like a march through time. The music bridges centuries, reminding the living that they are never alone. Women often lead these rituals, invoking the spirits of mothers lost to the sea. They chant lullabies in old tongues, rocking their bodies as though cradling children. The air fills with grief and love, inseparable, eternal. Gorée is a paradox, beautiful and terrible, peaceful yet heavy with sorrow. To stand there is to feel both admiration and anguish, awe and horror. The island teaches that history is rarely simple. It is layered, painful, and alive. The ocean that once carried ships of chains now carries ferries of remembrance. Each crossing reverses the journey, bringing descendants back to the threshold. What was once exile has become return, even if only in memory. And so Gorée continues to breathe, to speak, to demand. Its ghosts are not gone, they are guides. They remind us that memory is fragile, but also powerful. To forget would be betrayal, but to remember is to resist silence forever. At dawn, Gorée glows golden under the rising sun. The pastel walls seem brighter, the sea gentler, the streets quieter. But the light only sharpens the contrast, the beauty above and the horror remembered below. Visitors wander its narrow alleys, their footsteps echoing on cobblestones. Some pause to take photographs of painted shutters and flowers in bloom. Yet behind each image lies the shadow of chains, unseen but present. The island has a rhythm of its own. In the mornings, fishermen mend their nets. In the afternoons, children play by the shore. And at sunset, the air thickens with silence, as if the ancestors are closest when the day fades. Some families in Senegal trace their lineage back to Gorée. They tell stories of relatives captured and sold, of betrayals that still sting. Memory in these households is not abstract. It is blood, it is names, it is grief carried in the bones. African Americans often describe their first visit as overwhelming. To stand before the door of no return is to imagine ancestors stepping through, to feel a weight that is both personal and collective. Many break down in tears. Guides offer handkerchiefs, their own faces solemn. They have witnessed this countless times, yet each cry is unique, each tear another thread woven into Gorée's fabric of remembrance. The island collects sorrow, like the sea collects waves. Historians say Gorée was once a place of profit, now it is a place of reckoning. The same stones that once echoed with chains now echo with questions. How could this happen? What do we owe to those who endured? Ceremonial fires are sometimes lit on the beach. Elders gather, chanting prayers, pouring libations into the sand. The flames dance against the sea breeze, as if carrying the voices of the living to the ancestors across the waves. The Atlantic at Gorée is both calm and cruel. Its waves are gentle against the shore, yet its depths hold centuries of drowned voices. To look at the water is to see beauty, and to know that beauty can also conceal horror. Some say the island itself mourns. When storms strike, waves crash violently against its rocks, rattling shutters and flooding alleys. Elders whisper that these storms are the cries of ancestors rising from the sea. Artists carve masks from driftwood washed ashore, painting them in vivid colors. They say each mask carries a fragment of the past, a face to stand in for those whose names and likenesses were lost forever. Tourists sometimes expect history to feel distant, safe. But Gorée refuses that comfort. It brings the past into the present, pressing its weight onto shoulders, reminding all who visit that history is never truly gone. Children born on Gorée grow up surrounded by reminders. Their playgrounds are fort walls. Their classrooms overlook the slave house. For them, the past is not hidden in books. It is the ground beneath their feet. Some speak of healing circles held within the dungeons. Descendants gather, sitting on cold stone floors, holding hands as they pray, cry, and sing. The walls that once held despair now echo with resilience. Gorée challenges the notion of time. Standing within its walls, centuries collapse. The cries of captives feel as immediate as the sound of modern footsteps. Past and present coexist, bound by the weight of memory. The ocean currents near the island still follow ancient paths. Historians say they are the same routes that carried slave ships westward. To stand at the shore is to imagine the invisible trails carved into the sea. At sunset, shadows lengthen across the island. The door of no return darkens, framed in red light. Visitors gather quietly, watching the sun sink into the Atlantic, knowing that for millions, this was the last sight of Africa. The silence of that moment lingers long after. It is not emptiness, but presence. The presence of ghosts who refuse to fade. Gorée ensures they remain, watching, speaking, demanding remembrance. And so the island endures, not as ruin, not as relic, but as testimony. Gorée stands as both wound and monument, a scar that the world must never allow to heal into forgetfulness. Its ghosts walk with us still. Morning ferries bring waves of visitors from Dakar. They chatter at first, but as the island looms closer, voices quiet. Even before stepping ashore, many sense its gravity, as if silence itself is part of the passage. The first sight for many is the Maison des Esclaves, the house of slaves. Its pink walls seem almost too gentle for the horrors within. Tourists pause, uncertain, caught between beauty and dread. Inside, the guide's voice lowers to a hush. They describe the rooms where men were packed shoulder to shoulder, where women and children were separated, where rebellious captives were locked in darkness for days. The air grows heavy. Visitors press against the narrow walls, trying to imagine dozens crammed into the same space. The smell of damp stone mixes with the faint scent of salt from the sea. It is suffocating even without chains. The staircase leads down to the infamous arch, the door of no return. Guides pause here, letting the silence fill the room. Some visitors refuse to approach, while others step forward with trembling hands. Touching the stone is like touching grief itself. Fingers trace grooves worn by centuries, and for a moment the line between past and present blurs. Tears fall freely, absorbed into rock that has known countless tears before. From the doorway, the ocean stretches endless and unbroken. The horizon mocks with beauty, a vast expanse that once promised nothing but loss. The waves glitter in the sunlight, indifferent to the sorrow they carried. Historians note that Gorée's role in the trade was symbolic more than numerical. Yet, symbolism is power. The door of no return has become the icon of a wound larger than statistics, a universal grave marker for millions. Some visitors kneel in prayer, others sing softly, their voices carrying across the threshold. These acts of remembrance transform the space, reclaiming it as more than a site of pain. It becomes a place of defiance. Children of the diaspora often say they feel an inexplicable recognition. Though separated by centuries, standing in Gorée awakens something ancestral. It is as if blood remembers what history books forgot. The courtyard above contrasts sharply, bright, airy, open to the sky. Tourists step into the light, blinking, unsettled by how quickly darkness turns to beauty. The island refuses simplicity, forcing visitors to hold both at once. Outside, the narrow streets bustle with life. Artists paint, musicians play drums, vendors sell beads and fabrics. Gorée lives not as a frozen ruin, but as a community where past and present share the same ground. Yet the community bears its burden. Residents often say they are guardians of memory, living with ghosts as neighbors. They welcome visitors but also remind them this is not a museum, it is home. At the island's highest point stands a fort built by Europeans. Its cannons rust in silence, once symbols of empire, now relics pointing out to sea. Tourists climb the ramparts for views, yet the real weight lies below, in the slave house. The sea around Gorée sparkles, tempting swimmers, but many refuse to enter those waters, believing they are sacred. The ocean here is not just sea, it is a graveyard, too full of memory for leisure. Festivals on the island often weave remembrance into celebration. Drums pound, dancers whirl, and chants rise, honoring ancestors through joy as well as grief. Gorée teaches that survival is itself an act of resistance. Writers describe the island as a paradox, paradise cloaked in tragedy. Its beauty disarms, then strikes, reminding that even the loveliest places can conceal humanity's darkest deeds. Gorée embodies this contradiction perfectly. At dusk, the island glows in warm light, its pastel houses bathed in gold. Ferries depart, carrying visitors back across the water. Yet few leave unchanged. Gorée has a way of following them, whispering in memory long after. And so the cycle repeats: arrival, silence, remembrance, departure. Day after day, year after year, Gorée receives the living to honor the dead. The ghosts remain, not to haunt, but to ensure the world never forgets. Some visitors describe an invisible weight pressing on their shoulders. It is not the heat or the humidity, but something deeper. They say it feels like walking with the dead. Others hear faint music drifting on the wind, songs in languages they do not know. Guides smile knowingly and say the island remembers. Memory, after all, has many voices. In the evenings, lanterns light the narrow streets. Their glow casts long shadows on the walls, and some swear they see figures moving just beyond the light. Perhaps imagination, perhaps not. The Maison des Esclaves has become more than a building. It is a shrine, a vessel, a place where grief gathers and transforms into resilience. Each stone holds a fragment of the past. Presidents and world leaders have stood in its doorway. Some wept openly, some bowed their heads in silence. The place humbles even the most powerful, stripping away titles until only humanity remains. When Nelson Mandela visited, he lingered long at the door of no return. Witnesses recall tears in his eyes, his silence deeper than words. His presence made the island feel like a meeting of ancestors. For descendants of the enslaved, Gorée is both wound and homecoming. To walk its alleys is to retrace a path once taken in chains, but now taken freely, with dignity restored. Some ceremonies reclaim the archway as the door of return. Descendants step through it facing inland, symbolizing return to Africa. The reversal transforms exile into reunion, grief into strength. The ocean never ceases its rhythm. Waves that once carried despair now carry remembrance. Each tide feels like a heartbeat, steady, eternal, defying the silence of history. Local poets write verses dedicated to Gorée. They describe the island as a mother, wounded, grieving, but still alive. Her lullabies are carried on the waves, her cries etched in the stone. Children gather around storytellers who recount the island's past. Their eyes widen at tales of capture and resistance. They grow up knowing their home is sacred, shaped by both beauty and pain. Scholars sift through archives, seeking documents that tell the truth. Numbers vary, accounts conflict, but every record confirms the same. Gorée was a place where humanity was bought and sold. Yet, history cannot be measured only in numbers. A single child torn from her mother, a single man branded with iron. Each story is vast, each loss immeasurable. Gorée magnifies this truth. During storms, lightning splits the sky above the island. The thunder echoes across the sea, rolling over the slave house. Elders say it is the ancestors speaking, reminding the world they are not silent. Artists paint murals on Gorée's walls. Some depict chains breaking, others show faces gazing defiantly toward the horizon. Their art transforms pain into vision, ensuring memory breathes in color. The island's resilience inspires many. Though marked by tragedy, it continues to host festivals, schools, and markets. Gorée proves that life persists, even in places once defined by death. The ferry back to Dakar carries passengers heavy with thought. They stare across the water, the city's skyline rising ahead, but their minds remain on the island shrinking behind them. Some whisper promises aloud, to remember, to teach, to resist forgetting. The sea carries those promises with the same patience it once carried chains. And thus, Gorée endures. It is not just history. It is testimony, etched into stone, carried by waves, spoken by ghosts. An island that refuses silence, an island that demands remembrance. On quiet mornings, fishermen push their boats from Gorée's shore. Their nets dip into the same waters that once swallowed bodies. Each catch feels like drawing life from a haunted sea. Tourists walk the cobbled streets, cameras in hand. But often the lens drops, their eyes drawn instead to the silence that clings to the walls. The island resists being captured. It must be felt. Guides speak softly, their voices reverent. They know each corner, each stone carries weight. For them, the job is not performance, but ritual, a duty to the dead who cannot speak. Some visitors leave tokens at the door of no return, flowers, shells, even handwritten notes. The sea takes them one by one, folding grief into its endless embrace. In the shade of baobab trees, elders gather children close. They tell of ancestors stolen, but also of ancestors who resisted. Gorée is not only sorrow, it is survival whispered into every root. Drummers gather near the shore on holy days. Their rhythms rise into the air, echoing against stone. Some say the beats sync with the sea, calling spirits home. In the museum, shackles are displayed behind glass. Rust eats at the iron, but the weight is clear. To see them is to imagine wrists once bound, lives once reduced to metal. The smell of salt fills the air. Some say it mingles with something else, a faint metallic tang that lingers even after centuries. Memory, they claim, has its own scent. Gorée's church bells still toll on Sundays. Their chimes mingle with the ghosts, a strange harmony of faith and sorrow. For some, it is healing. For others, a wound reopened. Scholars debate how many pass through Gorée, tens of thousands, perhaps more. But every figure is shadowed by absence, faces uncounted, voices unheard, names lost to silence. At sunset, the island glows gold. The sea reflects crimson light, as though stained by memory. Visitors stand in silence, feeling history wrap around them like the evening air. Stories say some enslaved leapt into the sea, choosing water over chains. The waves remember their courage. On stormy nights, locals claim you can still hear their cries in the wind. In Dakar, life bustles, markets roar, music spills through the streets. Yet across the water, Gorée sits still, a reminder that prosperity rests upon shadows. The contrast is striking. Artists return again and again to the island. Painters, poets, filmmakers, they all find themselves drawn to its silence. Gorée is not just history. It is muse, wound, and oracle combined. The stone steps inside the slave house are worn smooth. Each step holds the imprint of countless feet. Walking them feels like walking backward into time itself. Candles are often lit in the dungeons. Their flickering flames cast shadows that seem to move. Some visitors say the shadows are not tricks of light, but the restless departed. The ferry captain says he never sails at night. Too many whispers, too many shadows dancing on the waves. The sea between Dakar and Gorée is alive with memory, he insists. In the island's small cemetery, graves of colonizers stand weathered. Yet for the enslaved, there are no stones, no names. The true cemetery lies beneath the waves. And so Gorée remains a paradox, beautiful yet broken, peaceful yet haunted. It is Africa's scar and Africa's strength, forever echoing with the ghosts of those who passed through. At night, Gorée seems to breathe differently. The streets fall silent, the waves grow louder, and the air carries a chill that does not belong to the tropics. It feels as if the island itself remembers. Some visitors refuse to sleep within the old slave house. They claim the walls whisper, that chains rattle faintly though none hang there. Dreams turn restless, heavy with voices not their own. Local legends speak of lights that dance upon the sea, blue glimmers that rise and fall like lanterns. Elders say they are souls searching for the shores of home. The door of no return casts its shadow on every story. To pass beneath it now is symbolic, but once it was absolute. The step forward meant disappearance, an erasure written in waves. Fishermen avoid casting nets near that stretch of water. They say the catch spoils too quickly, as if cursed. Instead, they steer wide, murmuring prayers as they pass. The museum guide tells of families torn apart, a child sold to one ship, a mother to another, a father left behind in chains. The ocean scattered them like seeds, never to reunite. In the silence of the dungeons, visitors press their palms to the damp stone. The cold seeps into their skin, and many pull back quickly, as though the wall itself remembers suffering. Each year, thousands make pilgrimages to Gorée. Descendants of the enslaved arrive from across the world. Some collapse in tears, others stand in quiet rage. All carry pieces of the past. The baobab trees rise tall, their roots twisting like chains. Yet they are also symbols of endurance. Even when cut, they sprout anew, teaching that survival is written in nature itself. Children of the island play on the beach, their laughter sharp against the heavy history. Life insists on continuing, weaving joy into a place carved by grief. Artists paint the door of no return again and again, sometimes as black shadow, sometimes as golden light. Each brushstroke asks the same question: what lies beyond? On anniversaries of abolition, drummers gather. Their rhythms summon voices long silenced. The sound is not performance, but prayer, rising from skin and wood into the waiting sky. The sea breeze carries salt and memory together. To inhale deeply is to taste history, sharp and bitter, yet necessary. Each breath becomes an act of remembrance. A stone plaque lists names of abolitionists and dates of treaties. Yet beside them, there are no names of the enslaved. Their identities remain ocean deep, untouchable, infinite. Visitors often leave in silence. Words feel inadequate, too fragile for the weight of the island. It is not what they see, but what they feel that stays with them. In Dakar, the ferry departs daily. Each crossing feels like a ritual, leaving the noise of the mainland for the solemnity of memory. Tourists chatter on the way there, but rarely on the return. The slave house stands with fading paint and weathered beams, but its presence is indestructible. Empires have fallen, flags have changed, yet its silence endures stronger than stone. Some believe Gorée is a wound, others believe it is a monument. But all who walk its narrow streets agree it is impossible to leave unchanged. For the ghosts of Gorée do not vanish with time. They walk beside every visitor, whisper through every wave, and rise with every drumbeat. The island keeps them alive. Today, Gorée Island is painted in pastel colors, its streets filled with music, art, and the laughter of children. But beneath that beauty, the shadows endure. Each stone, each wave carries memory. The ghosts of Gorée are not silent. They call to us, asking to be remembered, asking to be heard. To stand before the door of no return is to face history itself. It is to feel the weight of millions who were forced into the sea, into exile, into silence. It is to understand that forgetting is another kind of violence. Gorée demands remembrance. If their story has moved you, do not let it fade. Share this history, speak their names, and honor the lives that were taken. Like this video, subscribe, and share it so that others too may know the truth hidden in the stones and waves. Together, we can ensure that the ghosts of Gorée Island are never silenced again.